Step onto the dance floor with my next guest, David, as he reveals the mental, creative, and performance secrets that can elevate dancers and the teachers who shape them to their highest potential. Stay tuned. Ciao, I'm Anna Harsh, professional dancer, author, and host of the Dance Floor podcast, the podcast that offers you advice, tips, and unique ways to find those life lessons that improve our lives. So grab your dance shoes and join me on the dance floor. Welcome back, dancers. I'm here, Anna Harsh, your host on the dance floor, and I have a very special guest today. His name is David Coach. David, welcome to the dance floor. Thank you for dancing with us today.
Hello. Hi, Anna. Thank you for having me. Nice to meet you.
I love your accent, David. Tell us, our listeners, where you're from and what your work is about.
Yeah, so originally I'm from Germany, but in my previous jobs, I've traveled a bit around the world. I lived in the US, in Brazil as well, and currently I have been living in the UK for I think a little bit over 10 years now. And kind of my original background is I have an educational background. So I used to be an educator at secondary schools and universities and progressed into the field of high performance when I studied for a degree in performance psychology. And this is kind of what I'm working with right now. So I work as a performance consultant, and during my studies, I specialized in the connection between high performance and mental well-being. And I now work with high performers, mainly in the arts, and help them to address, I would say, immediate performance issues, and also help them to focus on their psychological and also emotional long-term development as performers and also as creatives. Yeah, I think maybe I should add that for my job and what I do, I rely mainly on the scientific knowledge that we have in psychology, mainly performance psychology and positive psychology, but also I studied a bit into the field of creativity and stuff, which is very interesting, especially like for performers in the arts. And yeah, and I kind of use the learnings that we've had from the experts who looked at different aspects and kind of made certain discoveries or findings, and I kind of work with that and then kind of integrate that and bring this together with the practical experiences of the performers in a way.
That's a lot of research that goes into that. I feel that so much because I do so much research myself with dance and all of my research that I've done in Europe about these specific traditional dances that I've studied from Italy. So I understand that, and I know how much work that goes into and putting those things and data together to make people
definitely
feel better and get some results for these elite dancers. And so in the United States, we have a lot of competitions for dance, and I know they go under a lot of amount of stress. And I'm sure that where you are living and traveling, they are as well. So, will you talk a little bit about mental load and resilience in your work? What are some of the most common stressors you see, and what strategies can we give them to help any dancer out without burning out so much?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you mentioned a couple of good points already. I think for me, so from my perspective, I have to say, from my perspective as a performance consultant, because I only deal with non-clinical performance issues, maybe my response to these questions are different than from someone else. But from my perspective, I would say that dancers in particular have to deal with a lot of major stressors, actually. And I think dancers often underestimate how difficult dance really is, because you have to, you have to combine different aspects. Like, there's like, movement, so motor skills and integrating these motor skills, and like these kind of things. Then you also have like a huge cognitive load because of what you're doing, and obviously that varies a bit depending on what type of dance you're doing, but there's a lot of complexity. So it's very difficult for our brain to actually be able to dance. So you have to put a lot of different components together, and I think so you have this, depending, I said, like on the type of dance, but on the style of dance, is like many dancers also have to be elite athletes. So it's kind of like they're an elite athlete, but they also have to, work with movement. And what is added into this mix, I think, for dancers is that they also have to express emotions and they have to, communicate narratives and these feelings. And I think this is also like very difficult from a psychological perspective to combine all these different aspects. And so I think obviously I'm not an expert in this field of dance, so I'm kind of working together with performers who are in this kind of environment. So I'm still continuously learning something and things. And that's why it's also tricky for me to generalize, something, because I think there's so many different things going on. But there's definitely
Right.
some bigger things that are very common. I think it's also down to the intensity and kind of the things that I just talked about. And there's a high level of stress in these kind of environments, and anxiety as well, I think, because it's very physical in many environments. There's also a lot of performers have to deal with pain and injury a lot,
Yes.
which is kind of different to other performance domains, like, musicians or something. Like the chance of them, depending on what they're doing, obviously, but there are injuries as well. I'm not saying they are not, but for dancers, it's like an acute thing,
Yeah,
and
it comes with the
yeah,
job.
yeah,
It comes with the
exactly,
job. Yeah,
exactly.
you're right. It's like an onion. I mean, we just have layers to our work. There are mental notes that we're giving to ourselves and that coaches or choreographers are constantly giving us. So we're intaking the
Yes,
mental notes. We're trying to spit them back out physically, with our physicality.
yes.
Then, like you said, we're telling stories and we're trying to evoke emotions and feelings on the stage.
Mm.
And those are compounded, become
Yeah,
stress.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
and like any job, you have to manage your stress in different healthy ways. And so I know for me, meditation is one of those
Hmm.
ways, the strategies that I use, as well as yoga or Pilates, something
Hmm.
that's a little more focusing inward that
Hmm.
has an outward effect. Is there any other strategies that we can do as dancers that maybe relieves a little bit of that stress? Or maybe when we are on
Hmm.
stage and we have that moment, we're like, oh, I need a minute.
Yeah.
I need a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think from my perspective, like the things that you're describing is kind of from a psychological perspective that puts a lot of mental load on your system,
Right.
and this is kind of tricky for the body and the brain to work with that. And I think so. If we look at kind of interventions that have proven to be effective from a performance psychological perspective, there are things like mindfulness, meditation, like things in a way where you learn how to, what you said, how to quiet down the noises and the stress. It's this kind of there's different kind of other ways. I think it's also a way to help is to implement interventions that help you to become mentally stronger, because I think it's a bit like with the mind, it's similar to the body, right? And I think it's kind of like through training and your body grows stronger, your muscles grow, and so on. And it's a bit the same thing with dance. So on the one hand, it is very helpful to relax and to take time on these kind of things, but at the same time, especially if you're a high performing dancer, you are under pressure all the time. Maybe sometimes don't have the time because of lifestyle and like performance schedules. You don't have the time to take the time in a way. And I think
Right.
for these moments or periods, it's important that you learn how to cope better with the stress by building, in a way, internal resources that help you. And there's lots of different things. And I think I cannot really give you one specific concrete thing, because it really depends on the individual,
Sure.
the different characteristics of, also their personality matters a lot. So especially like, I mean, this is also something that I became much more aware through studying, that how complex these topics really are, and
You're right.
where where generalization sometimes is not very helpful, because what helps one performer in this particular situation will not necessarily help another performer. You have performers who are naturally very confident and they need something else than the performer who is like really struggling with confidence in terms of like optimal performance. So I think, I mean, if I want to say something, I would say that sleep and rest are two of the main things. It sounds simple, but it's like also, and I looked at studies, and sleep and rest are like two of the things that make major differences in performance and in outcomes and in terms of like injury prevention and how you feel in general. And I think especially what we talked about previously is like this heavy load on especially on dancers, that they can deal better with that, because there's only, yes, you can train and extend your, your how does your ability to suffer, but there's always a limit. And and I
Yeah, there
think,
is a limit. You're right.
yeah.
I mean, and rest is really hard for us creatives, I guess, out there because
Yes.
our mind is always going, oh, I love to create this, or what
Yes.
about this? Or you read something and you get inspired, and the mind wants to go again. But you're right. If we can, we have
Yeah.
to practice. It's just like our routines or our technique
Yeah.
classes, we have to practice being restful, I guess. And that can
Yeah.
be challenging for creatives out there. But if we could quiet the mind and give the body a rest and have
Yeah.
a good night's sleep, I
Yes.
think we will see bigger results on the other side.
Yes.
And that goes for anyone, really, if they have a stressful job. But
Yeah. Yeah.
especially for us dancers and creatives out there, we
Yes.
we do need rest. And what I have found, what works for me, but you're right, it has to be tailored to each dancer or
Yeah.
person. What works for me is a system. If you can set
Yes.
yourself up with your environment and a
Hmm.
system, then you have routine in a different
Yes.
way. And I
Yes.
think
Hmm.
we as dancers love routines. So if we
Yes.
can find a system that works for you, maybe it's a certain time of the day,
Yeah.
you quiet the mind, everything's off, the phone is off,
Yeah.
maybe quiet the lights, are a little bit dim, and maybe you can find a routine that works for you,
Yeah.
that you can find that
Yeah.
wellness and that rest,
Yeah.
especially as we go into this new year.
Definitely.
Let's set ourselves up with a system, right, David?
Yeah, I mean, this is, I cannot agree more from a psychological perspective as well, because routines are very helpful for our mind as well, because they give us, safety as well, and kind of it's not just like, oh, it's not just the routine itself, but it's what is connected to it as well. And I think what I wanted to add maybe to this, everyone needs something differently, like in terms of like calming the mind. This can also mean different things for different people. So some performers might actually benefit from like mindfulness and calming down, and but other performers might benefit from doing something else, like, I don't know, like going out and walking for 30 minutes a day or
Yeah,
something. Like,
right.
it's really individual. So they are obviously, like, if you're already performing and exhausting your body on a high level, you want to like calm yourself down by not doing something else that is also exhausting and for the body. So, but it can still be physical, like I said, and you have to adjust the level of, how would I say, of load on what you're
Yes,
doing in a way. So
for sure.
yeah, but what you said, you're absolutely spot on with all these things like that you mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we've all lived through it. As you go through your career, you start to know, hey, this is not for me. I need to
Hmm.
stop and rest. I know this past year I did a 26 city tour, and at that
Yeah.
26 city, you're like, okay, yeah, we need to
Yeah.
rest and we need to pause. But I try to find other creative outlets. Like you said,
Hmm.
sometimes it's just a simple walk, or maybe it's just about painting or listening
Yeah.
to music.
Yes.
It could be
Yes.
something else semi-physical,
Yeah.
but maybe it's
Yeah.
just not on the body load or the mind load.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, many dancers that I know, they also are into like arts, like photography or film or something. So it's something that is still challenging and
Yeah.
complex, but it's not another physical thing that kind of exhausts them. But where they can, it's also a good output, like for creativity, if you're
Yes,
doing
that's what I was
something
going to
like this.
say. If we have to create, we have to do something else, that's
Yes.
artistic. And otherwise,
Yeah.
we'll just bottle it up inside and it's not going to work for
Exactly.
our
Yeah.
bodies.
Yeah. This is exactly what you're saying. What I say is like, nothing is either good or bad. It really depends like what you need and what is good for
Right.
you. And I think kind of the example that you mentioned, when like with touring or something. So when you have like a really busy schedule, I think, and this is sometimes we forget as human beings in general, but I think performers in particular, to listen to the needs of their bodies and their minds, and to be really tuned in and what they need, and also then having the courage to make these decisions, to be like, oh my God, the last half year was really crazy. I cannot do that again. I need to do something else. And so from this perspective, I think this is also like really important.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you hit on it. Having courage, that's a big problem for many high level dancers,
Yeah.
is having that courage to say, I need a moment, I
Mm.
need some help, or I need to rest or I need to
Hmm.
step back because we don't want to.
Yeah.
Our we're always on mode in the
Yes.
go mode, but we do need
Yeah.
to be okay with
Yeah.
having the courage to say, you know what, I need a rest.
Yeah.
I need a break because if nobody else is going to be in your shoes,
Yeah.
literally,
Yeah.
your dancing shoes or your life shoes. And so I think that's important to have the courage to say, no, thank you, not right
Yeah.
now. I need a
Yes.
break. I'll come
Yeah.
back, but I just need
Yeah.
a pause. And I think that's
Yeah.
hard for many
Yeah.
dancers to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like for many at the professional level, especially because there's this fear of like, oh, what if I don't do that now? Then this chance is gone forever and stuff. And this is kind of when I work with performers, this is something that like, I kind of work on as well, this understanding that, you have time, that it is beneficial to focus on your long-term development as well, and to not exhaust yourself in the short run. And I mean, there's lots of research over the last 10 years that mainly in sports, but I think similar things happen in other performance domains as well that actually show that I remember this one study that they looked at the junior elite athletes and looked how many of them actually became senior elite athletes. So they did like a bigger study and they found that so if you are a junior elite athlete, the chances to become a senior elite athletes are actually very low and then they looked at different reasons why in this specific study. So you cannot generalize it, but it's basically if you're already exhausting yourself when you're really young, the chances that you become an expert performer as an adult actually not that great
Wow.
if you look at this because of injuries of kind of many and this
Burnout.
exactly and this is I
Oh.
think this is from my perspective that I also always try to stress when I'm also talking about long-term development in performance psychology or in sports psychology. There's the field of it's called expert performance, and basically they look at what actually makes you an expert. And basically there's a couple of variables, but the most important is time. And
Mm.
there's a direct correlation again with these studies that show a lot of junior elite performers stop doing what they're doing, and then obviously they don't have this component of time to actually become like really, really good at it. And I think from this perspective, I also don't work with children or teenagers or something for a reason. And this is kind of one of the main reasons that I don't really like from a performance psychological point of view, I don't feel like there's a place, I think as children and teenagers, they should enjoy what they're doing. Fun should be a major component. Also, like I said, from the background of reading all these studies and stuff. And I think coming back to like this idea or understanding is that, if you want to be really good at something, you need to spend a lot of time on doing it. And if you exhaust yourself too early and then burn out, which happens with, especially also in dance, lots of dancers stop what they're doing. So they
Oh,
found
absolutely.
something, that they really love and enjoy, and then they stop it because it's become too much. And this is also like, I also work with performers who have made this experience and kind of want to get back into it. And I think that it takes a bit of reframing and understanding, how everything is connected and stuff. But I do think even on a professional level, you need to understand that you have limits. Yes, you can always push your limits further and further and further, but the limits, there are no limits, yes, but the limits, if you have to build them up slowly as well. You
Yeah,
cannot
I
like
agree.
go all out, right?
Right. It can't go to 0 to 10 in the
Yes,
first
no.
day. It's not going to
Exactly.
happen. I agree. And, I see a lot of dancers that, they stopped dancing, when they
Mm,
graduated for
mm,
younger
mm.
years, at 18, they're like, oh, I don't dance anymore. I used to as a child.
Mhm, mhm,
I think
mhm.
that's what happened. They got burnt
Yes.
out. It was too
Yeah.
much. And now I see them, after college, they've gotten their degrees and they're like, I really miss it. I want to come
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I get a lot of those dancers that say, well, I want to come back. So, we are
Yeah.
training them and pushing them and touring with them. And they love it this time
Yeah.
around, I should say,
Yeah.
because like
Yeah.
you said, it's a different frame of
Yes.
mind
Yes.
and they have different experiences now and they want
Yeah.
to enjoy it. And I think
Yes.
that's part
Yes.
of it. When we are on stage, a lot of dancers have a hard time connecting
Mhm.
maybe emotionally with another dancer. That
Mhm.
sometimes I run into that where they might have to make that connection because we're doing folk
Mhm.
dances and
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
that physical
Yeah.
touch and it's that
Yeah.
emotional background. What can we say to them to be okay with letting go and being vulnerable on
Mhm.
stage? And that's
Mhm.
making
I
that
mean,
connection.
I think that's a really difficult aspect and also a tricky question
I
because I
know. I
again,
know.
again, yeah, again, I have an answer, I think, but I just want to think point out that, it
Sure.
really depends on the individual situation again. And I
Sure.
think so. I think from this perspective of having read research, having worked with performers, I think that the environment plays a huge part. So in terms of, this kind of aspect, like because I think if you want, human beings to interact with each other, you need to have provided the space for that, right? And it's a bit like, I mean, I mentioned I come from like this educational background, and it's like telling someone, "Oh, you do this now." And
Right.
you don't explain anything, you don't give them, time to reflect, to
Yeah.
voice their own opinion, to kind of explore what that means. And I think the teachers and the environment itself, they are kind of, I don't want to say they are responsible, but they could help performers a lot to kind of, or encourage them. Also, I think this authenticity, I think that's important for us human beings from a psychological
Right.
perspective. And if you feel like you are in a safe environment where you can be who you are, and you can be authentic in yourself and stuff, that this helps. But I mean, I also have to say that dance in particular, what you mentioned with like the close proximity, like the physical proximity of dances, that yeah, I'm very careful like to give any advice on this, because I know it's like a really a complex and tricky
It's
issue.
complex, you're
Yeah.
right. What I try to do is do some icebreakers, let everybody
Mm.
get to know one another so that they have some kind of friendship or some kind of foundation
Yeah.
to go off of. And for folk dance, it's more about eye contact, especially for
Hmm.
our Italian folk
Yeah.
dance. Maintaining eye contact
Yeah.
for as we dance with different
Mm.
partners,
Yeah.
sometimes changing
Yeah.
partners
Yeah.
rapidly. And so I think having an environment, like you said,
Yeah.
that is open and welcoming
Mm.
and able to have them share a little bit about
Yeah.
themselves so that we know who we're dancing with.
Mm.
Because many of my experiences in the past, as a college
Yeah.
dancer, you're thrown into,
Yeah.
hey, so and so is your partner.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Now go be romantic with them on stage.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
I'd like to know their name.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I
Yeah.
try to let them develop a relationship or some kind of friendship at least,
Yeah.
so they
Yeah.
are.
I I mean, I think this is really important to understand. Again, it's like about human connection, right? Human connection doesn't just happen and stuff.
Oh,
And I think what is also really helpful is if you have a clear set of boundaries, and not forcing someone to do something that they are not comfortable with. So
absolutely.
if performers are in an environment where they know, if I don't feel comfortable, I can voice, that
Yeah,
I'm
voice
not
their
okay.
opinion. Sure.
Exactly, is like, okay, I'm not fine with this, or that you have this connection with the one you're performing with as well. And I think this is kind of like, that there's a mutual understanding, and what is okay and how comfortable you are with
Yeah,
certain things, I guess. So, and I think this is kind of important to encourage performers to really voice this and talk about this as well, kind of, and not make assumptions and be like, oh, that's probably okay, or I've always done this and this will be, no, but to
right.
be really connected to the specific situation. So, I mean, obviously, like again, it depends on the style of dance or the type of
Sure.
dance that you do. But for example, in contemporary dance, or somewhere you have like this very close proximity of like the
Yes.
physical proximity. And
Yeah, you have to know the boundaries,
yeah.
and we always say
Yes.
set the container. What are the
Yes.
boundaries? What is the
Yes.
container? And what do you feel? Are you feeling okay with this?
Exactly. Yes.
And
Yes.
as a choreographer too, I try to set those boundaries as well. Like this is how you hold her, or this is where
Hmm.
we're going to grab, your wrist or your
Yes.
leg or
Yeah.
whatever. So yeah, you're right. Like we have to have those voiced opinions and speak up. So if you do
Hmm.
feel uncomfortable, maybe the choreographer can change something, or maybe you
Yeah.
don't work with that partner. Maybe it's someone else that
Yes.
steps
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
love all of this, David. We need those options and we need all these
Yeah.
conversations for dancers to help us grow and become the best that we can be,
Yeah.
and taking that time to step back so that we can not have burnout and
Yeah.
not be that person that's like, nope, never again. We
Yeah.
want people to continue
Yeah.
dancing and enjoying it. But you're right. There is a time and space and a
Yeah.
place for it. And I think you gave us some good ideas and some things to think about in the new year and how we can set up ourselves for this next year as somebody who can grow with their art and not feel held back, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, this is also something I always think that it depends on the dance school that you're with, or the teacher, and also parents as well. I have to say so. Like,
Amen.
the it's kind of, sometimes you have tricky situations. Obviously, I work with adults, so that's no
Yeah.
longer kind of
Right. That's
no
not an issue.
longer an issue, but definitely like with children and teenagers, there comes a lot of pressure comes from often from the family environment, which is not very healthy for, performer child growing up
No, it's
kind of
not.
since we talked about, I think the dance environment is sometimes really restrictive and kind of it or I mean, it feels to the dancers, it feels very restricted. And I think there could be ways to give, a dancer more autonomy in a way. And I'm not saying that, oh, then the dancer can create whatever they want, but in this kind of respect for creativity to kind of or encourage the dancer to have a voice, to develop, to listen in, to find out who they are, what they really want, like for themselves, not because someone else says it or wants it, but to, yeah, find out, what you want, in a way, and kind of develop that and be encouraged to be yourself in a way. And if you like an area, explore an area, or integrate something that you have the freedom, to do though. So
Yeah,
though
and I
these
think
kind
as
of things.
teachers, we need to give more space to those moments, even
Hmm.
if it's at the end of a rehearsal or at the end of a practice or a technique class. Offer 5 minutes and say, "Can we just explore how you would like
Hmm.
to move?"
Yeah.
We do a lot of improvisation sometimes to start creative
Hmm.
processes for my dance company as we tour. I'm like,
Hmm.
hey, can we just be creative for a second and improv? What are
Hmm.
we doing here?
Hmm.
Can we do something with this or the prop? And I think the dancers really love it, and it becomes a group moment and a way for us
Yeah.
to bond,
Yeah.
and everybody has a stake in it then. And
Yeah.
then it becomes more important to them. I
Yeah.
do want this show to be the best it can be because now
Hmm.
I have a stake in it. This is part of
Yeah.
what I created.
Yeah.
No, I think we can have those spaces easily and we can create that. It doesn't take much, a
Yeah.
few minutes out of
Yeah.
your class
Exactly.
or
Hmm.
time. I think
Yeah.
that's how we can be more authentic, like you were saying.
Yeah, I think this is what you mentioned is I think it's often misunderstood that by choreographers and teachers as well that they have to change everything what they are doing, and it's not true. It's
No.
like it's small details that kind of make a massive difference. And I think what I looked into during my studies as well was something, or it's a kind of an approach. It's called autonomy supportive teaching or coaching. So I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yeah, I was reading a
Yeah.
little bit. Tell us a little bit about that because how can we do that? How can we be more helpful?
Yeah, so this is basically from the perspective, what can a teacher and a coach do? And autonomy supportive teaching or coaching is kind of an instructional approach where, the teacher or the coach creates kind of a learning environment that actively supports a student's innate psychological need to feel in control, of their own behavior, of their learning and their choices. So, and things like, so there are specific things that you can do. And I mean, I don't want to go into too much detail, but just to give some examples, it's, for example, which sounds simple, but to give students a rationale for why they're doing something, right? To not just say, oh, do this now, but to be like, okay, guys, we're doing this now because this is the reason we want to get there. And in order to get there, we need to have step 1, 2, and 3. And we're at step 2 now. As you can see, this is the continuation from step 1. So this is an important aspect, I think, that often gets forgotten in the way that maybe the teacher or the choreographer or the coach knows. They're like, oh yeah, I know where I want to go, but they forget
Right.
that the person that they're working with doesn't necessarily understand or know. And this kind of, and it also helps the teacher and the coach for themselves to get clearer on where they're going and what they want. So this is one element, I guess. And also big component of this kind of framework is that you as a teacher or coach, you accept and validate the feelings of the performers, and especially the negative ones. So
Yes.
if someone is frustrated or confused or disappointed, that you don't shut them off and be like, okay, let's not talk about this is bad or something, but that you engage and you're like, okay, why do you feel frustrated, like what's going on? And then also to kind of give the performer space, or to get to know them better in a way. Maybe something happened on the day, and obviously it depends on the relationship the teacher or the coach has with the performer, to give them space and engaging instead of dismissing. And I think also what is very important, and this is something I think, especially as teachers and coaches, sometimes we, and I'm including myself, we also forget to use the language we use is important. So one element of this autonomy supportive teaching coaching framework is that you use informational and non-controlling language. So that means like that you offer suggestions and information rather than use pressure or threats, or like, if you don't do this now, then this will
Right.
happen. Yeah, that you remove all this kind of pressure that is in the language in a way and in your instructions and your approach that you remove that. And kind of also, I think, and this is another element, is that you have to come away as a teacher or coach from these kind of external rewards in a way and or threats in as well, and encourage the student to focus on enjoyment and mastery. And I know like this is something like, especially like in high performance environments, I feel sometimes this is misunderstood because the idea is like, well, if I let then they do what they want or it's not going to work. But what they forget is that someone who is feels safe, who has autonomy and who's really engaged in what they are doing, that they will actually do much better than someone who feels like their position is at threat or something. And
Right.
I think these kind of things is it takes a bit of reading into and trying to engage with it and maybe dropping thoughts and assumptions that you've had and experiences that you've made as well. Because I think what is also really important to understand with us human beings is that whatever we experience, we usually pass on because we kind of learn, oh, this is what we're doing this. We've always done this. I'm doing this as well. So it kind of
Right.
takes really active reflection from, a coach or a teacher or to a choreographer to really look at what they are doing and then kind of find a way to be vulnerable and accept maybe there's something I can learn. Maybe there's something I can add to my skill set to, have better outcomes for the performers, for myself, this kind of aspect. I think this focus on like giving performers autonomy and what
Yes.
you said, it doesn't have to always be massive, but it's
No.
always in the small things that, small things matter as well. And like,
Oh my goodness, those small little tweaks to your teaching
mm,
can make a massive difference
yes.
to a student. And you're right. I can reflect on many
Mm,
teachers that I've experienced,
mm,
and I have not adopted their teaching
yeah.
style. I guess in learning how not to teach in a sense,
Hmm.
paying
Yeah.
attention to like what you were saying. Well, this is how we've always done it.
Hmm.
Well, things can
Hmm.
change and we can
Hmm.
grow and become different people so that we can be better,
Yeah.
growing and being, observant of those issues is a big factor. And
Yeah.
I do often ask students their why, not
Hmm.
just in the classes like this is we're
Hmm.
kicking our leg here because it represents this. I do a lot of explaining, and sometimes they're like, we get it, they're like, we're done with your stories, Anna. But I do ask them a lot, like, what is
Hmm.
your why? What drives
Hmm.
you to dance?
Hmm.
Why do you
Hmm.
keep coming back?
Hmm. Hmm.
And maybe
Hmm.
that's how you start your class. Maybe that's, something teachers can do or choreographers.
Yeah.
Why are we here today?
Yeah.
What is
Yeah.
driving you? And it's okay to ask dancers, how are you today? Because
Hmm.
yesterday might be different than
Yeah.
today. And that's
Yeah.
filling up the
Yeah.
space with the negativity is not always good, but it is
Yeah.
good to know how are we today so
Yeah.
we can
Yeah.
adjust maybe how we're teaching or
Yeah.
adjust the choreography for the
Yeah.
day.
I mean, this is what you mentioned exactly. The point is not to fill the space with negativity. The point is to be aware of it and to give space, but then to also like give the space to work with it, not to be like, oh, everything is bad, nothing is
Right,
working out. But today to be
right,
like, okay, well, what's actually going on? Let's look at. So what is not working? Oh,
right.
okay, this movement is not working. Okay, let's figure out why it's not working. So it's more, kind of an exploration of what we can do to change that. So it's kind of this always look at, I would say, this solution focused perspective on a problem. So it's not like, oh, there's a problem. Let's talk about this problem and why is it bad? No, there's a problem. How can we fix it? And you mentioned this what you said last about, that it's also okay for like a teacher or coach to be vulnerable and to kind of admit to themselves, oh, I didn't know
Absolutely.
that, or I
I
don't
didn't
know that.
know.
I can
Yeah.
still know, So
Yeah,
yeah.
I say that all the time. Like, is there a traffic issue? Like, why can't you get from A to B? And she's like, well, we have a situation here. We need a stoplight or something. And so I'm
Yeah.
like, oh gosh, I didn't realize that because I'm not inside of the
Yes.
choreography. You have to
Yes.
ask them,
Yeah.
well, what can fix it?
Yeah.
Well, if so and so could cut in front of me, then I could go around her.
Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm.
great. So we've solved the traffic
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next issue. So it's okay to not know everything. I mean,
Yeah.
you should always
Yeah.
be learning, even if we have tons of degrees. I mean, and
Yeah.
studied for years like I
Yeah.
have. I love
And
learning.
yeah, I mean, there's no denying that knowledge and experience is a big advantage and stuff. And I
Absolutely.
think, but also to still what you described, to still leave space for your own learning and your own development, because that's as much fun as it is to pass on knowledge is to actually
Absolutely.
learn. And I think this is something in my work that I do as a performance consultant. It's actually it's enjoyable for me to listen to the stories, to work with the performers, is because I am exploring a topic in much more depth than I would
Yeah.
have done if I
Right.
didn't have this personal connection and the story connected to it. And I always say that, teaching something also, I get as much back as I give in a way. I always have this feeling that and that's why for me personally, it's very fulfilling
Yeah.
to
You made a
have a job
difference.
like this. Yeah,
Yeah, you
exactly.
made a difference. And it's okay to look at different points of view and having it from their perspective. Sometimes I'll
Mm,
jump in the choreography and go, "Oh yeah, this right here does not work," because I want to feel
yeah.
it for myself, or I'll take a lap all the way
Mm,
around the stage
mm,
and see the
mm,
choreography from 360. Like, "Oh, that's way more interesting from the side. Let's turn the
mm,
choreography around."
mm.
And then the dancers are like, "Oh, yeah, that is cooler like this."
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
okay to look at things from all perspectives.
yeah,
I think that gives you a broader,
yeah,
knowledge and a
yeah,
view that maybe you didn't
yeah.
have before. I
Yeah,
mean,
definitely. Yeah, experimenting as well, that you're not afraid, even like I said, as an established teacher or coach, to explore new pathways and to give yourself the freedom and the right to be like, oh, okay, I know I've always done this, and this was kind of my major area of focus or development, but I have the right to look somewhere else now because I want
yes.
to explore more, and I feel like that you're not stuck in your ways for your own sake, actually, not even only for the dancers. This is also as much for you as it is for the performers, I think.
Right. As a creative, we should cross train as much as
Hmm.
possible. Listen to new music,
Yeah,
try on a new dance style,
yeah,
different pair of shoes or a costume and explore and have fun
definitely.
because life is short, David, as we
Hmm.
know.
Yeah,
And so we must explore and create as much as possible. Thank you, David, for sharing all of your knowledge. These are
you're
some really
welcome.
great tips. And I hope everybody is taking notes and starting the new year on a great new note and on a better footing, maybe, perhaps.
Yeah.
So if you need a little space or grace or rest this year, I think listen to this conversation again and have the courage to say a pause. It doesn't mean forever, but maybe just a pause and come back to your art or your creativity with a new voice, a new perspective, and a new view. David, thank you so much for being on the dance floor.
You're welcome. Couldn't agree more.
David, how can we follow your work? How can listeners go, gosh, I resonated with what he said. How can I see more of his work?
Yeah, so I have an Instagram account. It's called Sustainable High Performance with underscore sustainable underscore high underscore performance. And I kind of post about different topics connected to high performance and mental well-being. So I'm really working with this connection between these kind of fields. And I also published an online course about kind of the science of passion so it's an online course for performers in the arts and who want to explore like the underlying psychological mechanisms of passion, because I think what most performers don't know is that passion is actually a thing. So I know we always talk about it, we hear it, oh yeah, I'm passionate, this and that, but it's actually like a really well-researched psychological construct, and it has lots of consequences. And I summarized all this information and kind of personalized it and turned it into an online course, and that is also available via the link in bio or on my Instagram account. So if you're interested there, yeah, and if for anything else, also you can get in touch with me via DM, for example.
Perfect. David, I will leave those in the show notes so people can click and follow you. You
Amazing.
definitely need to follow David. He has some really great questions. I'm always looking at your Instagram like, oh, that is a really great question. I don't know. I'm going to think about that today. So
Thank you.
I appreciate that. And come back and let's talk about the passion next time. Let's talk about
Yeah,
that back.
I'm always happy to share and to have conversations, definitely.
Please and thank you, David. I love this. Absolutely. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the 5-star button and make us shine. I'm your host, Anna Harsh. Thank you for listening. And until next time, keep moving with purpose, passion, and authenticity on the dance floor.